Okay, we are live.
Yay.
I know. Hello. Hello to everybody coming into the LinkedIn Live. As I went live, I realized that they did yet another update to the LinkedIn platform. So, Lord help us. I hope that everybody's able to join just fine. All 200 of you that RSVP'd. A couple of logistics before we jump in and introduce the amazing guest for this evening. Andy Paul, the author of our book, Sell Without Selling Out, and Amy Rahovchuk. I think I nailed that.
That was perfect.
Who is the chief course creator of Sell in School. I want to hear from you, the audience. Please drop a comment about what inspired you to read this book or what inspired you when you read this book. We already had some great comments just in the LinkedIn invite of people saying that they loved this book. I think Nikki Ivy said, I fucking love this book. And I was like, if Andy doesn't put that on the next reprint, like, what are we even doing?
You get the picture on the cover for that.
Oh my gosh, Nikki, if you could go ahead and put that in an Amazon review, that would be great.
Yeah, really.
That is just like an ace review. You probably saw, let me go to the next slide here. You probably saw that starting next month, we are moving Business Book Club exclusively on to Patreon and our private Slack community. I've been shouting about micro communities and micro events from the rooftops. So it's time for me to, walk it like I talk it. The next book in 2 weeks is The Motivation Myth by Jeff Hayden. I misspelled his name on this, I'm seeing, but I already started reading the book and it's quite interesting. It's like a bit reminiscent of some of the Atomic Habits stuff, I feel like. And then the following month, we're going to do a Brené Brown, a classic. I chose The Gifts of Imperfection, but some great authors throughout the year, Seth Godin, Shonda Rhimes, Stephen Covey. So very, very excited about what we have in store. If you want to learn more about that, I'll drop the link into the chat, but it's just patreon.com/business book club. Frankly, I was like pretty shocked that I just got that URL. So I was pretty jazzed about that. So check it out and please consider joining us. Okay, let's jump in for tonight's discussion. Sell Without Selling Out, a guide to success on your own terms. Andy, Amy, two of my favorite humans to collab with. Thank you for joining us and tell us a bit about yourselves. Andy, do you want to get us started off?
Sure. I'm the author of the book. You want more?
Head to my website. Read my bio.
Host a podcast called Sales Enablement with Andy Paul. 1,125 episodes. We've been doing that for 7.5 years. Hopefully people have a chance to listen to that. Yeah, I've been in my own business for about 23 years now, working with startups, big companies, companies of all sizes, really in sales effectiveness, I guess. I mean, for me, the one metric that really matters is win rate. So we focus a lot on increasing win rates. A lot of companies have a pipeline problem. And I say you don't have a pipeline problem, you have a win rate problem. Mm-hmm. Win rate takes care of the pipeline problem. So anyway, I've been doing that. Prior to that, I worked for 7 or 8 different startups in the Valley and in Southern California, growing sales teams, selling everything from on-premise computer equipment to very large, 9-figure deals for satellite communications equipment and networks. So, that's me.
You folded it all into this amazing book. And we have some great people joining us. Sandy joining us from New Orleans on Fat Tuesday. I mean, that's like another review in and of itself.
Yeah, really.
Yeah. And then there was one comment that I absolutely loved from Randy, who said, she said, I felt like I was reading my own story when she read the book. And
that's very nice.
powerful.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think a lot of people felt that way. I think you did a great job putting a lot of the sort of emotion that is involved with selling into the words that maybe we couldn't figure out how to speak ourselves. And then look at this, a perennial favorite, Travis King.
Hey, Travis.
For some support. Amy, tell us a little bit about yourself.
I love this question. My favorite way to answer it is that I am a revenue human for life. I was raised by a sales VP. I sold enterprise tech and information for a decade. I pivoted to sales enablement, built out 2 sales enablement departments, and now I helped Andy with the book launch in this in a launch team or a community capacity, which was amazing. And now I am operating as a partner and head or chief course creator over at Selling School, which is us taking this book and turning it into an experience that people can learn how to apply these principles as quickly as humanly possible while having a great deal of fun. And so it's a pleasure to be here.
Yes. I love that. And we're going to dig into so much of that, Amy, because the book, I think, is like, while it is sort of theoretical, like so much of it is about mindset, there are also just these great nuggets that are so tremendously actionable as well. But before we dig into the actual meat of the book, I want to get a little sentimental for a second and talk, Andy, a bit about our origin story.
Sure.
And why I'm so especially jazzed to have this opportunity to interview you, because I've been a guest on both of your pods. So this is a treat for me. And, I think one of the reasons that this book resonates with me so much is that when we first met, which was only 2020, it feels like I've known you so much longer than that. It was really at a time where I was trying to find my own voice. And I was like testing some things out, but I wasn't quite there yet. I wasn't leaning all the way in, and you had me on your pod. And at the end of the pod, you asked me something that was such an incredible catalyst in my creator journey that I wanted to share it with everybody. And you asked me if I had ever thought about writing a book. And I laughed at you. Like, I shrugged it off. I was like, good one, Andy. Like, everything's already been written. And you pushed back and challenged that assumption. And said something along the lines of, many things have been written about, but none of them have ever been written about through your unique lens, your unique lived experience and viewpoint. And I was reminded of that. I'm like, maybe I'm going to cry. I don't know. We'll just really throw like a wrench in things. But I was reminded of that when I cracked open this book the first time. I had the privilege of doing a pre-read and saw this quote: insist on yourself, never imitate. So it's like a different start to business book club than where I usually go. But for anybody else out there that needs that little boost of encouragement to start writing, Andy always says, don't worry about it. It's just the first book on your bookshelf. So I hope that helps. And I'd love to hear from you, Andy, like, because this is your third book, right?
Third book, yes.
What encouraged you to write this specific book to add on to that bookshelf of books?
Because, just experience through my own, work with companies and individual sellers, how over the last 10, 15, 20 years, despite all the advantages, all the cool technology that's come into the sales and marketing space, we're not getting any better at it. In fact, arguably, we're getting worse at it. And why should that be? And so the book was in part to answer that question and try to provide a remedy, which was, for me, the answer is, well, we've become so process focused and so tool focused, then so focused on, I'll just call it useless metrics, that we've lost sight of what we're really trying to do, which is help buyers solve a problem, help them make a decision, and to do it in a way that, as sellers, where we win a higher fraction of our opportunities. I mean, there's this book that came out a year or so ago, and I talk about it on my podcast. People are tired of hearing about it, but written by a number of people for the Franklin Covey organization. Jennifer Colosimo, I think, was the lead author, and called Strikingly Different Selling. They commissioned a research firm to do research on win rate. I think they surveyed 5,500 companies across 12 industry segments across the world. Average win rate on B2B sales opportunities. This was for a price $100K and higher, which pretty modest. Average win rate, 17%.
Mm-hmm.
17%. I was talking to a friend today who was a serious sales consultant, and he said, yeah, I used to fire people if they didn't have a 35% win rate at a minimum.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I didn't have to fire them. They left. I mean, they weren't making any money. They weren't hitting the numbers. Yeah, we have situations set where, yeah, even like in the SaaS world, 20% win rate for organizations considered pretty good.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Is that
Hugely.
win rate, Andy, from like qualified discovery meeting through to closed, or?
Yeah, if it's in your pipeline.
Yeah. Okay.
Right.
Wow.
If you've deemed it acceptable, qualified enough to be in your pipeline.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Wow.
And so it's just, I just look at that and say, why is this the case where we're struggling so much just to win? Because, if you're in sales and you're only winning one of every 5 of your most qualified opportunities, as I like to say, practice makes perfect. What are you practicing? You're practicing losing, right? So the minimum standard for a seller I've always set, and I've always had teams live by, is we win more than we lose.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you have a 20% win rate on sales, one of the big terms, thrown around by, SaaS experts is product market fit, right? We need a product market fit.
Mm-hmm.
You only win one of every 5 of your most qualified opportunities. Can you claim to have product market fit?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, one of two conditions exist if that's the case. Either you don't have product market fit, or you just kind of suck at selling, or possibly both.
We have all,
So, and that's not the fault of individual sellers. I mean, this is how we're training people. This is the situations we're putting them into. So that quote, you saw from the beginning of the book, in large part driven by this idea is that, yeah, we do have these great technologies that exist. We do have conversational intelligence systems and so on. But the way they're being used, by and large, and the way people are coaching them is, trying to make everybody, use the old Air Jordan term, be like Mike, right? Not everybody can be Jordan. Not everybody can be, your best seller. They're your best seller for a number of reasons, not the word choices they use in a phone call or in a meeting.
Yeah.
And that's part of it, but there's so much more to it. And yet that's how we're coaching people with these tools. Is, we listen to this call, then listen, see what Mike does. I want you to be just like Mike. And this is how they're advertising the systems as well, right? Now everybody can sell just like your best seller.
Mm-hmm.
And my point was, well, that's not the path to success. The path to success is, how do I help you become the best version of you?
Mm-hmm.
If I can do that, then I can unlock the potential and you'll have a more fulfilling, successful career.
You're so right. And I'm gonna assume if people took time out of their evening, that they showed up today because they want to be better at selling in and not selling out. So I'm curious, and Amy, I'd love your take on this, and folks that have joined us, like, drop it in the comments as well. What is a clear behavior that is a selling out behavior? And what would you replace it with? Or, like, Amy, maybe a good question for you is, what are those signs that maybe you haven't even yet recognized in yourself that you are selling out, not selling in? And how do folks start making that change to be that sell in type of person?
I mean, there's so many to choose from. It's like, where do you even start? But I have loved posing this question. And Leslie, I know you know the answer to this one, but one of the questions that we pose over in Selling School now is, what is the purpose of asking a question while selling?
Deeper understanding.
What's our goal, right? It's understanding. A lot of times we hear about intent.
Amy did not float me the answer to that. I just.
And like, all of these things are important, but the reality is, like, when I was selling, like, the last couple of years where I was carrying a bag, I averaged 75% win rate. In fact, as a sales enabler, the first time Andy hit my radar, I was working on trying to get leadership to understand that our 11% win rate on inbound leads, like, if we could just plug some of the gaps there. Like we'd have a lot more revenue than continuing to stuff the pipeline with all this activity. And it wasn't, I had like storyboarded the entire state of affairs and it still didn't resonate. Like and it was head scratching. And then I saw Andy's post and I was like, oh, thank God I'm not crazy. Also, who is this man? But anyway, at selling school, like, what is the purpose of asking a question? And what I would propose is my purpose for asking a question is to get the buyer to think differently about their business problem. Right. And if we work that back, like our goal as sellers is to help them to change their behavior. Right. What precedes a change in behavior? A change in thought. And then therefore, what is the tool that we use to change behaviors? And of course, that is the question. A cool secondary benefit of asking great questions also happens to be gathering a ton of information and, understanding whether or not there's alignment there. And so I guess to sum it up, I would say it's the intent. Like, what is the intent that you're asking this question? What is your intent with preparation? What is your intent with the sales call or just in general? And I think when we really are honest with ourselves, a lot of times we're trying to persuade the buyer to move in the direction we want them to move and on the timeline that we want them to move within. And just fundamentally, that is in itself salesy. And with that, I'm going to pause.
Oof. Yeah. I mean, that is yeah, I love that. Andy, what would you add?
Well, if you think about our job, along with what Amy said, is, there's this basic assumption. We hear the data all the time is, buyers are 70% of the way through their buying process before they talk to sellers for the first time, which is just, it's just flat out false. But there's a reason for that is maybe if the thing you're selling is very transactional, but if it has any sort of complexity to it and it's a little more transformational product, one of the things buyers are looking for from sellers is to help them, to Amy's point, better understand the problems that they have and better understand the potential outcomes they can achieve by addressing the problems. It comes from being able to engage with them and ask certain questions and sort of follow a path. If you're 70% of the way through before you talk to a seller, that's not going to happen, right? They've already decided what the problem is and how they're going to solve it. So questions become really important. If we talk about in selling school and talk about in the book is, you earn the right to ask questions. Self-aware buyers want sellers who can ask those questions.
Yes.
They don't want salesy sellers. They're just there, self-motivated, self-interested, let's say, to Amy's point, doing something on their time frame. No, they want somebody to come in and listen, help them better understand the problems they're trying to achieve, trying to solve and the outcomes they can achieve. And then somebody will help them get to that endpoint. That's what they want.
Your comments reminded me of when I first started creating on TikTok, and people like very genuinely could not understand the job of a B2B seller because they'd only ever bought like B2C sort of stuff. And they're like, why would I need help picking out an iPhone? I know what iPhone I want. And I'm like, dude, buying like a $600 iPhone is quite a bit different than buying like a $60,000 a year piece of software where you need and want somebody to coach you through that buying process to help you make the best decision for yourself. And it might not always be that vendor, but to be that partner in that process. I just remember getting like absolutely like eaten up in the comments with people like couldn't grasp the concept.
I would argue that if any of those people went into an Apple store, that actually they experienced probably a fairly good sales experience, buying experience in Apple, because their people are generally pretty well trained and they do a pretty good job. I've generally been impressed every time I go in. Unless if they're buying it online, that's one thing. But I think that sort of interesting. I look back on the best sales experiences or buying experiences I've had, over the last several years. It's all been B2C. Buying a car. I've had, or leasing a car, but same thing. I've done that twice over the last 3 years and both are fantastic. I was like, oh my gosh, this person gets it. Right. So don't look down my nose at B2C sellers. I know some do a fantastic job.
No, but I think some of it just speaks to a general misunderstanding of what it is to be a sell-in B2B seller, that they think that customer service isn't sales,
Yeah.
right? We're like very much, they're like an Apple, I don't know what they're called. There's like, they have a fancy name, but like
Geniuses.
the geniuses, thank you. Like an Apple genius is just considered like a, customer service person. But you better believe that they get plenty of sales training.
Oh, they do. Like I said, in my experience, they're quite good at it generally too.
Yeah, they definitely made me buy.
Well, I mean, I could buy it all online, but I like my Apple Store.
Yeah. Oh, and phone too.
She's going full Apple.
Oh, that's hilarious. Okay, so let's dig into the book a little bit more.
Sure.
So as I mentioned, I had the privilege of pre-reading this book. So this was my second time reading it. And when I went back to the email that I sent you with my notes to prepare for this discussion, I wanted to see 2 years later if the same stuff resonated with me, because I'm on like a pretty different part of my own journey.
Right.
And it did. The overlap was huge, which I'm like, okay, that's great, because it means it like really resonated on a deep level. And both times, one of the things that I pulled out with like arrows and like dog-eared pages was the distinction between being a sales boss and a sales leader. And I think part of that is that like I spent most of my 15-year career in corporate as a first line, second line manager. Anybody who's joining us today knows what it feels like to have a good manager versus a bad manager, like a boss or manager versus a real leader. So I wanted to dig into that a little bit. Andy, Can you talk to us about what the difference is and why it matters?
Well, again, part of what I had been noticing the sort of trend-wise over the last 10, 15, 20 years is, an evolution from frontline managers who understood and operated on the principle that I only succeed if my people succeed. The only way that I can help them succeed is if I can help them become, as I said before, the best version of them possible, right? So I'm going to focus on, so in the book, I talk about, the role of a salesperson is to listen to their buyers, understand the things that are most important to them, the problems they're confronting and the outcomes they want to achieve, and to help them get that. Well, that's the role of a sales manager too, right? Yeah. Your job is to listen to your people, understand the things that are most important and the challenges they're facing, the things they're aspiring to accomplish in life and in their career, and then do what it takes to help them achieve that. Instead of, okay, did you make enough calls today? I spent the first 25 years of my career in sales positions, most of them in management and so on. But I can tell you, no one ever asked me how many calls I made. I mean, I went out and made calls. That was my job. My first job, I was out cold calling in business parks in the Bay Area, drive and park my car and make 30, 40 calls in person a day. They knew whether you're doing it. Your manager knew whether you're doing that. I mean, so, it wasn't like, put under my thumb. Instead, what they're doing is they're spending their time coaching me, going through the calls that I had. We filled out our call sheets and sitting down, going through them, trying to understand what they could do to help me become better and win more frequently. And we seem to have lost that focus because it's all about the metrics. It's all about the process. And it's like sellers have become sort of this idea, frontline managers oftentimes, and this is not to blame them. I think it's just the culture they're coming into is, sellers are sort of these interchangeable cogs. We've got this process and we just plug people into the process. It's all going to be okay. Well, if the process is so good, why are you only winning 20% of your damn deals? I'm always amused. I go on LinkedIn and these well-known SaaS consulting firms laying out these elaborate charts about the buying process and so on and so forth. And it's like, people are paying you several $100,000 for this, and they're not winning a goddamn thing. So why are you doing that? You're focused on the wrong part of it, which is what happens when a person talks to another person. Start there until you understand how you can repeat a 50% win rate. Don't focus as much on the other stuff. That's your number one focus as a sales manager. How do I help my people learn how to win a higher fraction of their deals?
Mhm.
And if you're at 20%, set the goal. This year we're going to get to 30.
Mhm.
So I guarantee you get all these knock-on effects when you increase your win rate, which is suddenly you start learning how to maybe sell bigger deals, right? Because you have the confidence that you can do that. That's just one of them. So anyway, Amy, sorry, didn't mean to monopolize.
No, I love that. And I'd love to have the folks that have joined us today drop a comment with their like sales boss red flag. It's a safe space. Don't worry. You can vent with us a little bit. And Amy, I absolutely want to hear your thought on this. But something that you said, Andy, it sparked something in me because it's the sales boss versus sales leader is on page 62. If you guys have the physical book.
Mhm.
And one of the, mine's right here. That's right. One of the pieces is coaching to the deal versus coaching
Right.
to the person.
Right.
And like, it was one of those distinctions that like, I knew, I felt it, I'd acted it, but I never, ever had seen it written so distinctly. And it blew my mind that the best managers I've had, and when I've been my best version of a manager, I coached the person because it wasn't about the deal they won that day. It was about unleashing their potential and helping them achieve their personal best. And when I was a bad manager, when I started, and like, let's be honest, folks, I was a shitty manager when I started. I was a sales boss. It was because I was super metric focused. And I was like, how many calls did you make today? And it felt gross. It felt icky at the time. But, I had a boss that was like, do you want to get fired or not? And I didn't. I really wanted to pay my rent. But it was just this crystalline explanation of what it really means to like be that coach that cares about the long-term success and potential of your reps.
That's a leader, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's how you inspire people to want to follow you where you're going, right? It's not like there are no expectations for metrics. I'm not advocating that. It's just where are you placing your priority?
Mm-hmm.
Because when our survey's done about coaching and frontline managers coaching, a couple of things come out. One is the biggest excuse for not coaching is, well, I've got too many demands on my time for reporting to senior management. And that's just an excuse you're giving. I mean, you have to have that conversation because it's not helping you, right? This part of the theme in the book is the guide to success on your own terms is you have to take responsibility for your own success in career and in life.
Yep.
And sometimes that means you have to have uncomfortable conversations with your boss. Sometimes you have to challenge them. I mean, in my career, and I write about this in the book, is I said, look, I think there's a better way to do this. And it's not disruptive. It's still within the general framework what we're doing. But, I just have different strengths. I got a different outlook on life, how I deal with people. Fire me if I don't deliver.
Yeah, there it is.
And I delivered because, there was a lot on the line. So, as a frontline manager, you have that same thing. If you're a new frontline manager, you're going to have to learn your trade a little bit. Hopefully you get some training, but you have to also be self-aware of what's going on.
I'm laughing because
we're getting some great
frontline managers. What a crazy idea!
Oh my gosh! Travis is showing up in the comments and just dropping hilarious examples of sales bosses. Amy,
thank you.
I know. I love it. I love all these people in the comments that show up month after month. You guys are the best. And folks were especially excited about this conversation. So always happy to see the chat popping off. Amy, what's your take on the sales boss versus sales leader and what it means and why it matters?
This was one of the hardest things for me about transitioning to sales enablement was realizing how pervasive the thinking was, to Andy's point about salespeople, right? Cogs that need to be managed. We're going to fix them. They are not problem solvers. Like, I actually walked out of a job interview one time when I was like, well, tell me about what your experience has been like enabling salespeople versus product. Oh, so much harder because they are not problem solvers. Anyway, I would expect that outside of a sales department, right? We are the second least trusted profession on the planet, a reputation that we have earned. But to experience it from our own, it just, that was really hard for me, really hard. And I would say, like, for me, at this moment in time, the biggest difference between a sales boss and a sales leader is the sales leader is the person that's stopping themselves and saying, who says, like, I understand this is the environment that I was raised up in. I experienced this as a seller, and maybe I was hurrying up to get out of the field because who wants to deal with that? And so it's all I know. And worse, it's the thing that has gotten me results in the past. But now at this point, it's like, who says it can't be better? Who says it can't be better? That is the type of questions I think our leaders are asking, with the knowledge that sales is always changing. Buying is always changing. Look at the last 3 years that we've just come off of. Right. I was talking to Andy about this. Like, everything is different. How we date is different. How we work is different. How we relate with our families is different. Like, I was even shopping differently the other day. I realized I was just I didn't even turn around to look at how my ass looked in the outfit. Excuse my language. I was just looking at the front of my whatever, because
your Zoom persona.
Like, true story. But, like, in all seriousness, like, think about these metrics and these activity, like this idea of like SDRs and like blasting out emails and sequences, like understand, friends, this model was designed in the early 2000s, right? When emails were brand new. So there was a novelty to them. And yet we are still doing the same exact play without having question. And so anyway, it's the person that is stopping themselves and saying, wait a second, I know that there's risk here. I understand that, I'm going to be, my neck's going to be out on the chopping block for a hot second, but can we look around at the dead bodies? Our win rates are in the toilet. Our attrition rates are in the toilet. The clients aren't renewing. Like, our renewal rates are in the toilet. 92% of buyers report feeling like a number. Like, it's time. It's time. And so those that are brave enough right now to step outside of the curve, step outside of what they know, step outside of, again, what brought success to them in the past, like, those are the leaders to me these days.
Well, it's a vicious cycle we talked about before. Is if you're perpetuating low win rates, then you're thinking about what needs to happen for top of funnel is shaped by that.
Yeah, that's it. That's all you're thinking about. Yeah.
Because so, one of the difficulties that confronts sales managers and sales leaders today, quite honestly, is, I think a lot of them know that it needs to be fixed, but they're also in these tough situations, as Amy just pointed out, is like, they enter a job and they think, well, geez, average tenure of a sales manager is about a year, a few months. Average tenure of a CRO is about 15 months now, 16 months. Can I really afford to take a risk to try to make a change? Or do I just sort of try to paper things around the edges and, shape it up a little bit? I mean, there's very little incentive for major changes. It takes somebody, quite honestly, has a little bit of courage to go in there and say, hey, we may down for a quarter or so because we're gonna make some real changes in this, and it's gonna be better. But you have to have some trust in me. Those are hard conversations, but they're not new conversations. I mean, I had a conversation. I took over a division of a company, not a big company, but it's about a $50 million division of a company, and they had just been indulging some really bad behaviors, sales-wise. Revenue recognition policies were scandalous. And I just said, look, we're just going to stop it. This is a publicly traded company too. And I was 3/4 of the revenue. I said, look, we're just going to stop. And it took us, quarter and a half to make a big dent in it. And so I had a down quarter, but then, it got better and started growing again. And, then the company got acquired, which is great. But somebody has to take a stand at some point. I mean, to think that, in B2B sales, we're going to continue with these low win rates and that anybody will find that acceptable in the long run, it's not going to happen. I mean, we've been in the go-go period for the last, 14 years. All parties come to an end at some point. At some point, you have to learn how to actually operate your business.
Can I, Leslie, may I speak to this or share something else or
it
whatever?
would be my honor to have you do that.
Can I have that in writing, please? Okay, so Andy, I love what you said about that, but I think that something that we don't talk about often enough is I truly think that there's a big skill gap on how to sell enterprise software.
Yep.
When we look at like the rush that especially those that are pursuing the management path are in to get out of the field, like it wasn't like that was a thing, right? That was a thing, like actually knowing how to multi-thread through an organization so I could maybe attempt to coach somebody on it. Like that's something that we don't talk about enough. And it's a big part of it. And also I'm reminded, Andy, of what you were saying. So we're friends, everybody listening, we're talking about doing selling school for frontline managers. And Andy had this great idea. He's like, what if we, upon entry, right, these frontline managers, part of their onboard process is they have to share a call recording where they themselves were operating as a rep
in their role as a
their role as manager, right? Just so that we could like, let's reality check or reset on where we're currently at. But I will say something to this idea that it takes a long time to turn the ship. And Andy, I heard what you said about quarter and a half. That is awesome. We have people.
That's the start. Yeah.
We have people in selling school like Leslie. I was always taught that don't use win rate as a leading indicator or as a success metric for enablement programs because it's lagging. Not only is it lagging, but there's so many other factors that are involved in like blah, 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 blah. Well, I don't believe that anymore. Like and here's just one story. There was one guy that was in selling school the first time. He was a brand new rep, right? We specifically said this is for experienced AEs. And he's like, get out of the way, hold my beer. So he comes in. He's at 0% win rate. The company average is 14%. By the end of the program, he's 17%, 3 clicks above company average in 6 weeks. Anyway, fast forward a month and a half, he's doing it again, right, to reinforce those learnings and then some. He starts the program this time around in the group coaching to share that his current win rate right now, 34%. Brand new rep, never been an AE, 20 points above the company average. And it's just one story. And so these are the types of results that we're starting to see now from selling school. And so like, it's nonsense, this idea that the change takes a long time or that the revenue is lagging, absolute nonsense. And so for those that are, to Andy's point, brave and courageous enough to lean into something different, hear me clearly, friends, those results will come.
Oh, they will come. I was actually creating some new testimonial. I don't know why I used air quotes. They were just literally testimonial.
Now we know what they are.
Yeah.
Yes.
I still have a question because apparently there were are they really testimonial?
But I do a lot of creating of repeatable processes for outbounding for my clients, but I will never just do the processes and like the sequence, the copy without doing skill set training. And I was going out to clients to ask for results so that I could make them into quotes and, make them into Canvas. And one of them in 4 months, 14% was their win rate when I came in, 48% 4 months later. 4 months later. And it was because we focused deeply on skill sets, like needs analysis and questioning. And we didn't actually start by focusing on what you think a top of funnel outbounding consultant would focus on, which is like, how many emails, right? So you're so right. There can be that very quick turnaround. Okay, we are already.
I was just going to say one thing that, sort of to this point about managers, and this is true sort of for startups, but you see it across the board, not just startups, but is this idea is, you hire somebody on with the mandate to grow. And the first thing they think about is hiring people.
Right. Or increasing outputs.
Yeah.
Well, but I took a different tact, which is when I took over a sales organization, like the first one I took over for a startup years and years ago, we had 4 sellers and we were doing about $7 million a year in revenue. 2.5 years later, we're doing $35 million in revenue with 4 sellers. We taught them how to sell what we had. And then the company continued to grow beyond that, and they added more salespeople and so on. But for what we were doing in that time frame, that was great. And we've replicated that experience several times, is when you come in, is learn how to sell what you have first, right? Get the win rates, engineer to the win rates you want, then scale that. Don't engineer to some phantom process that doesn't relate to your win rate, and scale the head count based on that, and then continue at your 20% win rate.
I think it's important to note our sales processes right now, friends, in the current state, like the value, like for process, I have a green belt in process design. And one of the principles is value flows at the pull of the client, right? The client that our existing sales process serves is the company by way of predictable revenue. And so like it doesn't serve the client. It doesn't serve the reps. Often it doesn't serve the frontline managers. It serves the company so that, and the shareholders or the board or the VCs, so that they know how much revenue is about to come in. And so just the whole model, it is what it is.
Can we just put a bullet in the term predictable revenue?
I didn't even say it, but I talked about
Did you see Andy when he said that?
It's only predictable in aggregate, right? Because when you look to the individual seller, if your win rate, let's say it's 20%, you go into the start of a period, let's say a month, you have no freaking idea which one of those 5 is going to close. That is inherently unpredictable. It's the opposite of predictability. So that's what the low win rates, you don't have predictable revenue, you have predictable in aggregate, but it's predictable in the same sense that you know what the odds are at a casino game in Vegas. That's predictable. You know, if you go to a slot machine, it's going to return a certain percentage. Well, that's what selling has become with these low win rates. It's just a casino game. We know if we put enough crap into the top of the funnel, we just have to be sort of good and we're going to win a certain percentage.
Pay no attention to the dead bodies dropping along the way.
But who wants to live in that world, right? Your clients don't want to live in that world.
Yeah. Buyers, all the data shows
yeah.
that.
Right. They don't want to be in that world. So it doesn't have to be that way. And you can perform so much better, earn more money. I mean, just think about win rate and how much money you leave on the table with the low win rate. Yeah. Anyway, I'm sorry. I'm
bringing us back to some tough questions.
Tough questions. Go ahead.
Chapter 8, Persuasion. Okay. I think that this, for me, when I first read the book, or maybe even when you first told me the concept of the book, was one of the pieces that I struggled with the most. And Amy, I want to come to you first on this, because I know you've been really working your tail off building a lot of this curriculum for the sell in school. Maybe like a softball question, how do you sell without persuasion? But like more specifically, because I know this is something that people struggle with. How do you become a sell-in seller? How do you sell without persuasion, without crossing the line to becoming a pushover?
Okay. Well, shout out. I am not building this course alone. I have a phenomenal partner in obviously Andy, but also Meg Mishak. Big shout out to Meg in the chat. Like, who is a key part of this team.
Is Meg here?
Yeah,
yeah. She's been dropping some comments, dropping some fire emojis.
She's got a new name, by the way.
Oh, is this where we're going? Okay, so how do you sell?
Well, no, we had the transcripts, the autocorrect on transcripts we were doing for one of our sessions. So Amy became Amy Rehab Check. So that's her new name, Rehab Check. And Meg became Magnus Shack. So Meg Ruchak became Magnus Shack. So we got Magnus and Rehab Check.
I even changed my Slack name today, just in honor of this new name, just for the camp. Okay, so how do you sell without persuasion? The first step is recognizing that you are currently selling with persuasion, right? And that persuasion, right? Every time you've been taught a tip and trick or set the next meeting in the meeting, or like control the point of contact, like all of these things, these are persuasive. The alternate choice close. Like I could do this all day. I took these courses and read these books as well. This is 99% of the things that you are taught as a seller are teaching you to persuade, which ironically, cue Alanis Morissette, is an action that is universally despised by everyone. Right? Yeah, it is ironic. Is it though, or just like it's crying or laughing depending on the day. But anyway, so step 1, recognizing that it's a thing, and then step 2, it's learning the science of influence, right? And so it's like the fundamentals. We happen to be teaching this right now, and we are doing so based off this great book. I'm not sure if you heard of it. And the 4 pillars: connection, curiosity, understanding, and generosity. And so we literally are building skills within each of these pillars, and again, how it relates to the actual deal that you're moving through, like a pipeline or what have you. So I don't know if that answers the question exactly, but again, number 1 is recognize that, but like probably there's a great deal to improve your current understanding, and then seek out places that understand the difference and are actively teaching it.
Yeah, I mean, so the trouble with persuasion, besides, in addition to what Amy said, it's reference research from a professor from Penn, Jonah Berger, who wrote a book called The Catalyst, studies about persuasion, that 100% of human beings resist being persuaded. It's not 95% or 100%, according to research. Everybody, we all react to it. We put our fences up when we think people are trying to persuade us. And if your mindset as a seller is, my job is to persuade you to buy my product, well, you don't really care whether you understand what's really important to them and the things they're trying to solve, because your problems really don't matter, because I need to persuade you to buy my product regardless.
Buy my product, take my meeting, read my proposal, sign my contract. Like there's so many things that you do along the way. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, and that's just at the heart of selling out behavior. The heart of salesy behavior. It's this, unrestrained persuasion, as if this is a desirable skill. Whereas, as I write in the book, and I contend, and I've seen, through so many years of experience working with sellers, is that, the mindset you have is you're going out to listen to your buyer. Right? I'm going to ask questions. I'm going to listen. I'm going to understand the things that are most important to them. I referred to this before, right? Most important to them. And I'm going to help them get that. That's my job. I'm going to listen, make sure I understand what's most important to them, help them get that. Well, where's persuasion in there? That's not going to help you, right? Because you're there to help them. And so you earn the right to influence the choices and trade-offs they make through the use of the pillars. We talk about you can connect with them at a human level, build your credibility and trust, use your curiosity to dig deep to understand what's really driving the decision, and then help them navigate their buying process to make a decision. And you help them with the choices and trade-offs they make along the way.
Yeah.
It's just the opposite.
It's an important distinction, which is why I asked the question, because it's something that I hear people saying, well, I have to persuade, or like, I don't want to be a pushover. And I think that distinction between like manipulation,
right,
versus like you are going through a sort of process of helping them understand, or like maybe the way to put it is like, it is still okay to be prescriptive, because you are an expert on your process and you hopefully have done your dang research and
you're advocating.
Yeah. Right. So you are being consultative, you are being prescriptive. And there is such a big distinction between being prescriptive and being manipulative to persuade them to do something that isn't necessarily in their best interest.
Right. So here's a question to ask yourself, or I guess it's 2 questions, is when you're dealing with your prospects, are you trying to change their minds or help them make their mind up? If you think your job is that you're trying to get them to change their minds, then you're sort of maybe a believer that they're 70% of the way through their selling process, through their buying process when they interact with you the first time. So they've already sort of made up their mind, about what the problem is and how they're going to solve it. And you're trying to change their mind. But in reality, in most cases, if you're doing it well, is actually helping them define, right, what the problems is. To Amy's point early on, you're asking them questions that cause them to think differently about the problem and the potential outcomes they can achieve. Well, then you're helping them make their minds up. A completely different way of looking at it. I'm not very, very infrequently in more than 4 decades of sales, I ever feel like I was trying to change someone's mind. I was trying to help them make up their mind to buy from me.
Yeah. It's, what I for anybody that's thinking about this one, this was a question that was posed to me on a different show. And it was somebody in a live like this. It was like, what do you do when your cycles don't align, right? When my timeline doesn't align with the buyers. And I think it is a valid question, especially when we have sales bosses that want for us to contact our prospects over Christmas Eve dinner to get them to sign a contract. But anyway, so what do you do?
I read the book.
So one of the ways like that, like the question I pose to people in this moment is, are you still going to have a quota 6 months from now? Are you still going to have a quota 3 months from now? And the answer is yes. And so one of the things as a rep early on that I was trying to suss out is what their other priorities on their roadmap were right now. And how often they were not ready to start the buying motion right now. And I explained to them why. And so in 6 months, when all those priorities were off the table, guess who they remembered?
Amy, you were like genuinely describing the key to my success. Like that is how 50% of my enterprise deals have been closed is because I just was sort of the last person standing that like kept sending them valuable deposits and like didn't harass them, didn't beg for time in their calendar, but was just like,
read this article, chapter 3 or paragraph 3. This sentence reminded me of the conversation we had. Thought of you. Hope you're doing well.
Yep.
Absolutely.
It didn't even require a lot of time to keep it warm or to nurture. But like when you truly give the buyer the experience of seeing seen, validated, and understood, of feeling that way, they remember that they're going to come back to you, like whether or not you remember to send them nurture items along the way. Not to take away, Leslie, from what you're saying, but yeah, this is a big one. If you want to be able to really shed persuasion and move towards influence, you have to figure out how to reduce your own agenda, including, I need to make my number this quarter.
Okay, I'm going to skip us to generosity. If anybody else was behind the scenes and could see my truly type A aggressive run of show, you would know how many questions that I want to ask the two of you that we are not going to get time to ask. Because I think that the chapters on connection, the chapters on curiosity are so powerful. And for anybody that hasn't yet read the book, it's worth it. It's like worth the $20, I promise. So I'm
not even that much.
Even less. So I want to skip to generosity because that was my favorite chapter, both the first time and the second time I read the book. And like, I think when I very first read the book, I was really deep into testing my like first ABM campaigns. And I was this, had been this like committed advocate for trigger campaigns and long-term nurture. And kind of to your earlier comments, like I was fighting uphill. I was being told it was a waste of time. I was being told I was stupid. I was being like, it was a battle. And I was like, I don't know, guys. I really feel like customers like this. So I kept at it. And when I cracked open the chapter for generosity and saw the words buyer-centric, which, like, to be fair, 3 years ago, buyer-centric wasn't the same phrase that it was now. Like, it wasn't all over the place. But I cracked open the book and I saw this quote, for most sellers, buyer-centric selling falls victim to the demands of the archaic, linear, stage-based sales processes that they've been trained to follow. And Amy, your comments on like alignment and just like, being there and continuing to be generous. I think it's a perfect segue to this, but let's give some here in our last few minutes, like let's give some super actionable advice. Like, how can you become a good giver?
Well,
just cackles from the
yeah. Well, we'll start with the basics, right? So in the book, I describe what value really means for a buyer. What value means for a buyer, just sum it up. It just means one word: progress, right? It means that as a result of my interaction with you, doesn't matter what form that interaction takes, email, video call, phone call, in-person meeting, whatever. As a result of an interaction with you, I am closer to making a decision afterwards than I was beforehand. That's value. So if you have an interaction with a buyer that doesn't achieve that, then arguably it had no value for the buyer, has no value for the buyer, it has no value for you. So why were you doing it?
Yeah.
So as a manager, you can take this advice I'm going to give you, or as an individual contributor looking at your own pipeline, 2 questions you need to be able to answer about every opportunity in your pipeline. One, what do they need from us right now to help them move closer to making a decision? And two, as a result of receiving that from us, what steps are they going to commit to take? And if you can't answer those two questions about every opportunity in your pipeline, then you need to go back, right? And you need to look again at, have I been asking the right questions, right? Have I been digging deep enough? Have I built the connection, the credibility, and the trust with the buyer so I can ask those questions and get the answers to them? Because just because you ask the questions doesn't mean you're going to get the answer that you want or the answer that they're prepared to give somebody that they built the credibility and trust with. So if you can't, just use that as the benchmark. If something extremely actionable, that's it. Start there. And generosity is, what do they need from us now? What do they want us to give them right now to help them move closer to making a decision? What steps will they commit to take as a result of getting that?
And hint, friends, this is not a place where we make an assumption. I would highly encourage everyone to actually ask the buyer, okay, what do you need right now? Instead of, let me summarize this 2-hour meeting and put all these notes and proactively do all these things, honing in and understanding what they exactly need.
Yes.
And when they need it by, so that you can deliver. But again, make no assumptions here.
Well, and hopefully you ask that question at the end of the previous call, right? You summarize the previous call, the previous engagement, whatever that interaction was. And so you know that, right? You shouldn't ever leave the previous interaction without knowing this.
Yeah.
But in case you do.
Oh, go ahead, Andy.
No, but in case you do, as Amy said, got to ask some questions.
And something else that Amy said that I absolutely think is worth like being super specific about. You said, share a white paper, but don't share the white paper. Say, make sure that you go to the bottom half of page 12, because that has specific insights on insert thing that is relevant to them. I picked out this podcast, fast forward to minute, 15 and 34 seconds for this great quote that I think you'll find inspirational, because you want, when you're making those deposits, when you're being generous, you can't, lazy generosity won't cut it. You need to make it as easy as possible for your prospect to get that value of your generosity.
Andy, if I could real quickly, I would also make it as easy as possible for yourselves, friends, as the seller. So the only way I was able to execute on a strategy like this at scale, I had Google Alerts set up for all the business problems that I was solving for. And so anytime anything new with a name would come, this is how I would start my day. And it would just bang it out. And so I didn't have to spend any energy finding them, but also I would save them. I had all the full bookmark catalogs. And so after a conversation that I had, if I knew one of them spoke to a particular problem, specifically how to solve said problem the person was just talking about, I would shoot that out as well. But again, I made it easy on myself too.
Right. And you focused on such an important concept as, our buyers are extremely busy. They have to make choices every minute of the day about how they're going to spend their time and attention, right? They have a limited supply of both. And so if you are consuming them with that time and attention with emails or phone calls that have nothing of value for them,
or it's buried too deep, and
or it takes too much time to get to it,
you're
going to stop getting their time and attention. So I use the phrase, the term in the book, ROTA, return on time and attention. Are you providing your buyer a return on the time and attention they're investing in you every time you interact with them? That's the bar you have to hurdle, and it takes thought. It takes a little bit of deliberation. It's not just, shooting the sequence out. No, you'd have to be, as Amy did, you have to plan. I used to do something very similar with Google Alerts. I call this value-based persistence, right? If you're going to continue engaged, you have this obligation. Every time you send something, every time you consume any bit of their time, it has to have something of value in it for them. Otherwise, why are they going to engage with it?
Make it matter. If anybody wants to learn how to set up Google Alerts, just ping me in LinkedIn. I have some really easy to follow guide tos. I love a Google Alert. I've been using them for 15 years and they are free 99.
Oh, no, it's
love it so much. Okay, we are right at time, but there's a couple more things that I just want to go over really quick.
We'll stick around.
We didn't get I skipped so many questions. This should have been 2 hours. It was my mistake. I'm sorry, everybody. It was my mistake. I knew this
We'll come back.
conversation was going to be, I know we'll have to do a redo. Yes. Thank you. I love this slide and I want people to read it. Amy, I want you to tell people if they're interested in learning about Sell in School, how do they learn more? How do they maybe join? Give us the deets.
There's a landing page. It's, I think it's, let me get it to you.
I heard it has a really fancy logo on it.
Oh man.
Yeah, designed by our friend Leslie Vanetz.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, that's so funny. Okay, so I'm dropping the link here in the private chat to Leslie, for instance. She's going to put it on the screen for everybody. Also,
I will. Stand by, team. Stand by. I'm switching screens. I'm doing all the things between my
host and producer.
Host and producer. Private chat. Oh, it's sellingschool.andypaul.com. So Amy's made it pretty easy for us there. Okay, I've just dropped it into the LinkedIn as well. And then obviously, got to put in one last plug for Business Book Club. I'm like a little bit emotional about taking them off LinkedIn Live. I'm still going to do one a quarter on LinkedIn Live that are sales focused. So like next one, I think I'm going to do Ronald Richards' new book, Shut the Hell Up and Sell. He's a classic. Just absolutely love him. So that the other books because we do so much for just sales, and I want some that are like, embracing of the whole commercial function, general business acumen. So I'm jazzed that that community will continue to grow. So if anybody else wants to join, right. Micro community. We're just doing the dang thing.
There we go.
Oops, that is just mostly my face. Let me try again.
You're the star of the show. You should get top billing. Yeah.
Just me at the end. You two, I just appreciate you both so deeply as humans, as folks to collaborate with. Andy, I love this book. I love everything that we've ever done together. So thank you, and to everybody that took time out of your evening, your Fat Tuesday, New Orleans evening.
Jim, I was dying from your comments.
And thank you for blowing up the chat. That means a lot to us to keep it interactive. So big thank you to everybody that joined. Amy, Andy, thank you so much.
Thank you, Leslie.
See you for a part 2.
Yeah, looking forward to it.
All right, bye.